You've seen the symbol, you've definitely heard the songs. But what is anarchism, really? Today, we're going to look past the leather jackets and the rebellious slogans to get to the heart of the political philosophy behind a word that, let's be honest, is pretty misunderstood. So let me ask you something. When you hear that word anarchy, what's the very first thing that pops into your head? Because for most of us, it's probably something, well, something like this. Maybe you're picturing just total, absolute chaos. Society completely falling apart, buildings on fire, just a complete and utter free-for-all. Or, hey, maybe it's just the idea of no structure whatsoever. No laws, no government, just a void. And of course, you knew it was coming. There's the big one. Punk rock. The leather, that sneering attitude, that whole rebellious vibe. And that connection was pretty much cemented forever by one very famous lyric. Yeah, that one. The iconic line from the Sex Pistols' Anarchy in the UK just blew the doors off the 70s. It was this defiant scream that basically introduced millions of people to the idea of anarchy as pure, unfiltered rebellion. And here's a fun little tidbit. Johnny Rotten, the guy who wrote it, later admitted he pretty much only used the word because he needed something that rhymed with Antichrist. But hey, the damage, or maybe the magic, was already done. And just like that, a single line in a song helped turn a really complex political idea into this powerful cultural symbol. And now you see that symbol everywhere, from music and movies all the way to the t-shirts you see at the mall. You know this starter pack, right? I mean, we've all seen it. The classic Circle A, the black flags, that general no rules for me attitude. It's the go-to shorthand for chaos in movies, and it's a total staple of punk fashion. It's so mainstream now that even Cardi B was rocking a giant Circle A patch in her video for Bodak Yellow. But the real question is, does this starter pack actually tell the whole story? Because that's the pop culture version. And to really, truly understand anarchism, we've got to look past the t-shirts and the slogans. This isn't just an attitude, it's a full-on political philosophy with a long and pretty fascinating history. Okay, so at its absolute core, this is what anarchism is all about. It's a leftist philosophy that wants to get rid of not just government, but all systems that create unequal power. We're talking about the state, capitalism, and even things like the prison-industrial complex. That tangled web where government and corporate interests use prisons as a fix for social problems. So the goal isn't chaos, it's actually a completely different kind of order. And this gets to a really common misunderstanding. Anarchism isn't about having no rules. It's about who gets to make them. Instead of a top-down government telling everyone what to do, the whole idea is to build society from the ground up. Think about it like a workplace where everybody, not just the boss, gets an equal vote on the big decisions. That's the principle right there, using voluntary cooperation and direct democracy to make choices together. The historian Mark Bray, who's written a ton on this, really boils it down perfectly here. He calls it a form of socialism that's all about rejecting traditional elections and top-down control. Instead, the focus is on direct, democratic action by the people, for the people. And, this isn't some new idea that just popped up with the punk scene in the 70s. Not even close. The roots of anarchism go back centuries, and it's been evolving and branching out this whole time. The word itself, anarchos, which just means without rulers, actually comes from ancient Greece. But as a modern political movement, it really took off in the 19th century, right alongside other big critiques of capitalism. A huge moment was the Paris Commune in 1871, this brief, radical period where Paris was run by the people, which really helped spread anarchist ideas all over the globe. And look, just like any big philosophy, there's not just one way to be an anarchist. The movement has split into all these different traditions, usually in response to different kinds of hierarchy. You've got anarcho-communism, which focuses on economic inequality. Then there's anarcho-syndicalism, which saw labor unions as the key to change. And more recently, you have thinkers applying that same core idea to other power structures, which gives us things like anarcho-feminism, targeting patriarchy, and green anarchism, which is all about environmental issues. So because it's a leftist philosophy, you can probably guess that anarchism gets lumped in with a lot of other ideologies. Let's try to clear up some of the most common mix-ups. This is probably the number one question people have. And yeah, they share some goals, like wanting to end capitalism, but their methods and especially their views on power are worlds apart. So the main split, it really all comes down to the state. Orthodox Marxists have traditionally seen the state as this kind of neutral tool, something that the working class can take over and use for its own ends.
Anarchists, on the other hand, say no way. They argue the state is inherently an instrument of domination and that it has to be completely abolished, not just captured. And that, as you can imagine, leads to two very, very different ideas about how you organize a revolution.
And that brings us to another really important relationship. Because anarchism is against all forms of oppression and hierarchy, it is, by its very definition, anti-fascist. Anarchists have a super long history of fighting fascism, most famously during the Spanish Civil War. So the key takeaway is, while not everybody who opposes fascism is an anarchist, all anarchists are fundamentally anti-fascist.
Okay, so let's bring it all the way back around to where we started, the world of pop culture. Now that we've got a handle on the substance behind the slogans, we can actually see the influence of these ideas in some pretty surprising places.
And honestly, the sheer range of people who have been influenced by anarchist philosophy might just blow your mind. We're not just talking about punk rockers. We're talking about George Orwell, who literally fought alongside anarchists in Spain, the famous playwright Oscar Wilde, the world-renowned activist Helen Keller, and the legendary sci-fi author Ursula K. Le Guin. It's this incredibly rich intellectual and artistic tradition that goes so much deeper than just the Sex Pistols. So we end up with this question, that circle A on a jacket. It's simple, it's direct, it feels rebellious, it's powerful. But as we've just seen, it represents this huge well of history and debate and political theory. It really makes you wonder, right? What else do we think we know just because we recognize the symbol? Thanks for sticking with me.